With there said to be real heat between CM Punk and Eddie Kingston, and WWE telling unvaccinated stars that they are less valuable, this is Wrestling Hub. My name is John, and you're watching the Wrestling Report for November 12th. Before we get into the rest of the video, make sure you subscribe to Wrestling Hub and turn on all notifications to stay up to date with everything in the world of pro wrestling. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at WrestlingHubOfficial, and also follow us on Twitter at Wrestling_Hub. After getting defeated in the ratings during the Wednesday Night Wars with Dynamite, NXT has gone through many changes. On the Generation of Wrestling podcast, Eric Bischoff talked about the current product and its issues. I think what I'm seeing thus far, and we don't know yet because NXT 2.0 is new at this point, but I think NXT 2.0 is having an identity crisis. I think deep down inside, there are people that know, hey, we just have to go back and be a little gritty, and it needs to have an edge. It can't be so pretty. It can't be so WWE in order for it to have its own identity. It needs to be different from the Raw and SmackDown product. What I'm seeing so far is a tendency to lean into the Raw and SmackDown product in terms of its presentation, which if I'm right, and I could be wrong, I hope I am, but if I'm right, it will just further distance the audience away from NXT because they want something different. With the brand focusing more on younger talent with athletic experience outside pro wrestling, we'll have to see how NXT continues to grow. Following his AEW debut earlier this year, Lio Rush found himself injured and retired. Now he's back with the promotion once again. On Talk is Jericho, Rush touched on the differing backstage environment between WWE and AEW. I felt comfortable around Tony Khan, and I felt comfortable being in the locker room for the short time, but I was in the locker room at the pay-per-view and it felt different. I did not feel like WWE, even though I was seeing the same faces in the backstage environment look the same, and I'm still in the stadium, stuff like that. Despite that, there was something different about that. It made me feel like this was a second chance. It felt like a second opportunity for me. Among those recently released from WWE were Lince Dorado and Gran Metalik. The two requested to be let go following a disagreement with how a match was supposed to end. As was noted in the Wrestling Observer newsletter, the story behind the scenes of Dorado and Metalik is that both asked for their release after being asked to lose on main event to Garza and Carrillo on September 13th in Boston. The story behind it is that there were those in the company who viewed this as punishment for Dorado, who was booked to lose the fall. Usually that would be Metalik when the team would lose to a makeshift team. At the time, there were no plans for Garza and Carrillo, and Dorado was hot after the match and asked to talk to Vince. As you can imagine, that wasn't viewed well. Wanting to talk to Vince over the result of a match on main event that almost nobody would ever see outside of Canada, Dorado was the one who asked out first after his match, and Metalik agreed to do it as well. We were told that Metalik had wanted out, but he was not the kind of guy who would have asked out. The belief is that more likely than not, they would not have survived this round of cuts either way. Speaking to Ariel Helwani, AEW star Bryan Danielson was asked if he would ever do an MMA fight. As Danielson admitted, he's flirted with the idea previously. That's just not how I'm wired. I was super proud of him because it's such a huge leap, and Punk is somebody who, it's not like he ever did super competitive sports. It's very different from Brock Lesnar jumping to UFC, who has a high-level amateur wrestling background, who's just a monster of a human being as far as physique-wise and athletic ability-wise. To be kind of famous, and then to just put yourself out there like that, I thought it was really cool. I'm someone who, I kind of flirt with the idea of doing an MMA fight, and then my wife will tell me what a bad idea. Tomorrow, Danielson will face Miro in the finals of the World Title Eliminator Tournament at Full Gear. When it comes to ticket demand for Survivor Series and Full Gear, neither WWE nor AEW is looking to be in a good spot, as the Observer noted. Regarding secondary market tickets, scalpers stayed away from Full Gear as there were only 440 tickets on the secondary market, which is shockingly low. But even with that, with the show not sold out and the demand for those who don't have tickets not being big, the get-in price is $40. I guess being in Minneapolis had something to do with it, since All Out Chicago, the last pay-per-view the company did, had the highest secondary market demand as far as pricing for tickets in the history of pro wrestling. One of the reasons for that was so few ticket brokers bought tickets for All Out, and it sold out instantly, so that did make a killing. Survivor Series is at 868 secondary market tickets for the Barclays Center on November 21st. That's also unusually low, but not as surprising since the original demand for the show wasn't there even in the New York market. When they've had SummerSlam in the Barclays Center in the past, there had been as many as 7,000 tickets, or roughly half the house, bought by secondary market brokers. With future plans in mind, the Observer has said that WWE does not currently have an NXT TakeOver event set in place, and they don't have a Hall of Fame ceremony on the agenda either when it comes to WrestleMania week in Dallas. Regarding Mania week, the company announced the full schedule. Keys are that there is no NXT TakeOver or NXT event right now scheduled, nor is there a Hall of Fame event announced at this point, although that could be added for Thursday. We were told by those in WWE that the talk was that there would be activities set up in the Dallas area from Wednesday through Monday. While WWE had talked of doing Raw at a smaller stadium in town, they were able to book the American Airlines Center, their usual arena for both SmackDown on April 1st and Raw on April 4th. WrestleMania access will be at the K. Bailey Hutchinson Convention Center. During AEW's media call for Full Gear, Tony Khan was asked a question about AEW doing a women's-only show like NWA's Empower event. Khan would cut her off before she finished her question, with him saying, "I'm gonna cut your question right there, because I don't think I get enough credit for what I did for the NWA show, because a good number of the people that wrestled on the NWA show were wrestlers that I sent and paid. So I do think I contributed, because the highest paid wrestlers on that show were actually the people I paid separately from what they already make in AEW to go and wrestle on that show, and I don't think the NWA did a very good job of telling people that, even though it was in the deal that we did. I wish they told more people, because it was one of the points I made when we closed. I said it would be nice if you told people I'm paying the wrestlers coming in, because that's a big contribution from me, if that makes sense. So I did pay the wrestlers for that show. It's kind of like when you pay for a dinner and nobody thanks you." This would lead to backlash for Khan, as fans thought he was being condescending. The woman that asked that question then took to Twitter to say, "Tony Khan and I have resolved today's media call incident privately, and he apologized. Thank you to all who brought awareness to today's discussion." Speaking to sports media, AEW star Chris Jericho talked about constantly reinventing himself in WWE, making it clear he had no intention of being a nostalgia act. "When I first started working on TV every week in WCW, and more specifically in WWE when SmackDown started, and we used to do both shows before the roster split, I said people are going to get bored of me pretty quickly if I'm on TV twice a week and I look the same and have the same rap, shall we say. We've got to change it up. I remember the late great Pat Patterson said to me, 'You always have different facial hair every week.' And one of the reasons for that was because it was always something different. Subtly, it was something different. I had different tights that I changed every week, and then I noticed that they would make an action figure for every set of tights that I wore, and every set of facial hair that I had. So now you're paying more money too, because there's more diversity of what people can market for you." At Full Gear, Jericho and the Inner Circle will be facing America Top Team and Men of the Year. Roman Reigns returning to action as the Tribal Chief has been one of the most exciting parts of SmackDown. With him serving as the Universal Champion, Reigns looks unstoppable. On his podcast, Jim Cornette said Cody Rhodes should take a page out of Roman's playbook, so I have no idea why he is resistant to switching heel. Dusty was a heel in his early career, and actually that's exactly how he got over it. The famous angle which switched him babyface, and he never switched back because he never should have. I'm not sure why he wouldn't want to switch heel like WWE did with Roman Reigns. If they want to boo you, just let them. Then at some point, conditions may change, and here's the perfect way to switch me back. Then they will like it. While Cody has said he will retire before he turns heel in AEW, it seems like the most logical choice for the American Nightmare. Despite budget cuts said to be WWE's reason for recent releases, reports have claimed those talents being unvaccinated also played a role in stars getting let go. In the Wrestling Observer newsletter, this was said about WWE stars being unvaccinated. Regarding vaccinations and people being fired, while nobody was told that if they didn't get vaccinated that it would threaten their jobs, there were people very much encouraged to get vaccinated. One top wrestler who was not vaccinated was told if you didn't get vaccinated you would be less valuable to the company due to not being able to go on overseas tours. Speaking of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, it was pointed out that there could be real heat between CM Punk and Eddie Kingston. A wrestler/subscriber noted to us after watching the Kingston Punk segment on Rampage, "I can fully vouch for Eddie's promo on Punk the other night. I was sitting right there in an IWA Mid-South locker room when Punk called Eddie and his partner at the time, Blackjack Marciano, fat, lazy, and unsafe. Marciano had just accidentally injured Delirious in a previous match, and Punk was hot about it, so just buried them non-stop. I could see why Eddie hung on to that hate and anger for so long. Punk and Kingston are set to face off tomorrow, as it'll be interesting to see where they go from here." And this was your pro wrestling news update. I hope you're all having a great day. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later.